is really an advocate for both health and welfare of humanity and of non-human creatures that, a lot of us forget about in the anarchist community. A lot of people think that, it's all about us, when in reality there's a lot more than just you and I that are affected by this system. So Gina's going to give a talk about conscious eating and how we can improve our health and our environment and our relationship to nature through being very conscious about what we decide to put in our bodies. So without further ado, Gina Carr.
Thank you so much, Carmen, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate the great job that you guys have been doing. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Sunny. What I'm about to show you is probably the best short film that you will see all year. So if you want to come over and see this short film, that would be fantastic. Okay. All right, folks, welcome to Casa de Carne.
We'd like to start.
share our planet. Jeff Berwick talks about that we're all born anarchists, and I suggest that we're also all born vegans. Take a look at, I'd like to introduce you to Chicken Boy. It's a good one too, eh? So how many of you would be like Chicken Boy or like Eric? If you were forced to kill an animal in order to eat it, I guess most of us would not. I understand Mark Zuckerberg said that he was only going to eat animals that he had killed. I don't know if he's killed any to eat or not, but I just think that's another very powerful illustration of how we're taught as youngsters, be kind to animals, be kind to all living things, and yet our parents are feeding us animals. So we're going to dig into this a little bit more. It was really at Anarchadelphia, the very first one, 2015. How many of you were there? A few? Okay, fantastic. I've fortunately been to every one. It was at Anarchadelphia that I really started thinking and beginning to think about how I could apply the non-aggression principle in my life. And I was walking along the beach one day, and there was a fish that, you know, the fishermen bring in the catch, and the people stand around, the tourists stand around and buy the fish directly from the fishermen. And this poor little fish, this guy's scaling it, it's still alive, it's flopping. It's just, and it was so heartbreaking. And at that time, I had pretty much been on a slide to stop eating animals. And I was still eating a little bit of fish. I'm like, no more, I am done. No mas, because that fish is an individual that feels pain, obviously, and wants to live. And so it was there that I thought, you know, I'm really no better than the mafia boss who just sits back at home drinking wine and pays people to go torture and kill other living beings for himself. And so I said, you know, I'm just not going to do that anymore. And it's been fantastic for my health. I just a couple months ago, did my very first sprint triathlon, and I've never felt better. I feel like I'm de-aging, and I've lost over 50 pounds. It's been fantastic for me. Another concept that's really important to us in this movement is the concept of freedom. But the desire for freedom is not just related to human animals. Have some fun one day Googling or DuckDuckGoing or floating. I don't know if you can look up things like this on Float yet. But you know, cows are escaping. Animals escape on their way to the slaughterhouse. They know what's going on. And so cows escape. This one escapes, smashes through a metal fence, breaks an arm of a man trying to catch her, and swims to safety on an island on a lake. I think she was trying to get away from certain death. But what happens right now is over 150 billion individuals are slaughtered every year for human food. And we do have a choice. For years, I didn't think we did have a choice, but we do have a choice. I'd like to introduce you to one of the ethicists that I follow, Colleen Patrick Goudreau.
The problem with the justification, eating meat is my personal choice, is that it presumes there's no victim, and that my personal preferences, my taste buds take precedence over anything or anyone else. And yet, as a society, we have decided that certain behaviors are wrong when they cause injury or harm to another. Your right to throw your fist ends at my nose. Think about what abusive parents say when they're accused of child abuse. They protest that they can do whatever they want in their own home, that it's nobody else's business. And yet, child abuse today is illegal and punishable. When it comes to institutionalized animal abuse on animal factories and slaughterhouses, the only difference is that it's status quo, that it's the norm. But that doesn't mean it's not abuse, and that doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's systemic. A personal choice might be how I decorate my house, but a personal choice to hurt someone else, that doesn't seem like a pleasant credo to live by. It seems we need to make a different choice.
So that's Colleen Patrick Goudreau. You can find her at joyfulvegan.com. She's coming out with a brand new book in November. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to change the world. But she says, of course, one life matters, especially to the one whose life it is. Another ethicist that I follow is Dr. Melanie Joy, and a lot of what I'm going to share today is from her book and her work on why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows, an introduction to carnism. And this is a lot from her TEDx talk that she did. And basically, she boils it down that we think our food is a choice, but it's really a matter of our culture, our taste, habits, and convenience. That's what determines most of our food choices today. And many of us, we're just eating what we grew up eating, right? That's what initially our religion is, our belief in state, government, politics. We bring so many beliefs and so many habits from what we did growing up. But by the time we were old enough to say, but Mom, you said be kind to animals, and isn't this chicken the one that was running around Grandma's yard yesterday? Did Grandma kill that chicken so we could have chicken dumplings today? That's kind of one of my introductions to it many years ago back in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I was perplexed, but I was told, you must eat animals. So I want to take you on a little thought experiment here. And I want you to pretend that you're at a dinner party, and the wine glasses are clinking, and everybody's talking and having a great time, and you've all sat down, everything smells so good, and you're having what looks like a wonderful stew. It tastes like a wonderful stew, and you say to the hostess, gosh, that's so good. What is in it? To which she responds, well, the secret is in the meat. I started with 3 pounds of well-seasoned golden retriever. Well, many of you are like, yuck, huh? I think I would not take another bite, and I would probably excuse myself to try to go to the bathroom and see if I could expel that golden retriever, because who wants golden retriever in their body? Well, not me. But did the meat change? No, the meat didn't change. It's just your perception. My perception of the meat changed, not the meat. But in many countries, people eat dogs regularly. In Asia, over 20 million dogs are eaten for food. So it's a matter of convenience and taste. And some countries look at the way we eat and say, wow, I can't believe they kill pigs. I can't believe they kill cows. But they do. Their lives are miserable, just like our farmed animals. And then they're tortured and slaughtered and strung up for consumption. But again, in other countries, here we are killing cows by the billions. In other countries, people are killed in their communities by neighbors because they killed a cow. I want you to think about that. Think about how crazy this is. I'd like to introduce you to frog, because in this country, we eat a lot of chickens.
School started back in August, obviously, last year, and I would usually go to the front yard and wait on the school bus. Frog had kind of followed me to the front yard, and I said, well, okay, you can follow me, it ain't no big deal.
Oh, there you are.
On the third day, he decided he was going to go by himself. Ever since then, he's done it every single day.
And the bus is here.
He could be indoors, and he will start crowing right about the time the bus is going to go. Like, I know what time it is, I know the bus is coming.
He hatched out of the egg. I mean, I was probably the first person he saw.
Well, the first person he saw was a cat. We had a cat that roosted on the eggs. Wherever Savannah was, he wanted to be wherever she was.
Well, we could go on, but Savannah and Frog do laundry together, and they do homework together, and they're friends. It's her companion animal. It's her pet, much like many of us would have our dogs or cats. I've never had a chicken as a pet. I never knew that chickens had such intelligence or emotional bonding ability, but apparently they do. And in this country, we eat a lot of pigs. Let me introduce you to this family of wild pigs. imagine the intelligence and compassion that it takes for a family of wild pigs walking along and seeing a fish that's dying, and they know to work together as a team to nudge it back into the water. Is that amazing? It's a wild pig. And research shows that pigs have higher intelligence and higher emotional complexity and abilities than dogs. Most of us probably wouldn't eat our dogs. And I've never had a pet pig, but I know people who have, and they say they are marvelous companions. So what's going on in our brain that allows us to root for the escaped cow while we're eating a plate of steak and posting on Facebook about it? It's something going on in our brain, and Dr. Melanie Joy has labeled it carnism. So it's the invisible ideology that conditions us to eat certain animals. So folks think vegans have a philosophy, but folks who eat animals do as well, and it's called carnism. So some people are statists, some people are carnists, and some people probably even Baptist. A few Baptists out there maybe? It's such a dominant ideology that we don't even know that it's an ideology. We just think this is the way things are. So it's much like the Matrix. You know, you don't even know you're in it until somebody wakes you up and you watch a Jeff Berwick video and you're like, statism? What's statism? Oh, okay. Anarchy? Maybe I am an anarchist. The thing is, you cannot procure animal meat without violence. You got to kill the animal. Currently, good news, they're working on things in the labs where they've just taken some serum from the animal, they pop it into the lab and they're growing it, and one day maybe I'll eat a ribeye again. I used to love ribeye. I did not stop eating animals because I didn't like the taste. I stopped eating animals because I realized the violence that was incurred, and I learned that the health benefits are tremendous. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's what's going on there, you know, tremendous violence. So carnism is not consistent with most of our values, right? I dare say anyone in this room. Most of you have values of compassion and justice and authenticity and the desire for nonviolence. But carnism exists because of many factors, one of which is the defense mechanisms that have been put up to let it exist. And that is 1.2 billion animals are slaughtered every week. But how many of you see any of these animals? They're mostly raised in CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, in horrendous conditions, no sunlight, no, nothing that's good there. But what we see is a package of meat in the grocery store or a plate of baby back ribs on our restaurant table. We don't think about the fact that here's another cow that ran away, Emily the cow, who ran away from slaughterhouse, and she actually became quite a star in her community and throughout the country. Okay, most of the videos I've shown so far, kind of fun. This one's disturbing. If you are sensitive, you probably want to close your eyes and plug your ears until you hear my voice again. It's 2 minutes.
Piglets are castrated by workers who cut into their skin and rip out their testicles. Next, the workers chop off their tails. Once pigs have reached market weight, they are sent to slaughter. At the slaughterhouse, pigs are knocked in the head with a steel rod, hung upside down, and have their throats slit. Improper stunning condemns many pigs to having their throats slit while they are fully conscious and suffering. Because male chicks don't lay eggs and do not grow quickly enough to be raised profitably for meat, they are killed within hours after hatching. The females have it even worse. Workers use a hot blade or laser to remove part of the chick's beaks. At the slaughter plant, the birds are dumped from their crates, then roughly snapped upside down into moving shackles by their fragile legs. They are then pulled across a blade which slices their throats, causing blood to pour from their necks. Calves on dairy farms are dragged away from their mothers and violently killed. The majority of today's dairy cows are confined on factory farms. Workers subject young cows to painful mutilations and amputations. Unreliable stunning practices at the slaughterhouse condemn many cattle to having their throats cut and their limbs hacked off while still alive and conscious. Massive trawling nets indiscriminately drag hundreds of tons of fish and other animals along the ocean floor. They are then tossed on board where the surviving fish either suffocate or are crushed to death.
Thank you. I know that can be very hard to watch. And believe it or not, this footage this is industry practice, and some of this comes from even humane and bio operations. There are quite a number of farmers that have come out and said, this is not humane, and that's another not fun, but interesting Google search to do is to say, humane farmers who've spoken up against the practices, that their foods were labeled humane and they said they weren't. So how does this exist? Here's another aspect, the invisibility, and then there's the myths of carnism, the justifications. Eating animals is normal, necessary, natural, and necessary, right? That's what we think. But we've heard this before. Slavery was normal, natural, and totally necessary. Male dominance, normal, natural, and necessary. Heterosexual supremacy, normal, natural, and necessary. All of those until it wasn't, right? So let's look at normal. Why doesn't traditional media tell you about this? Well, think about it, and think about the ads you see on traditional TV. Eat at McDonald's, eat at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Oh, you've got indigestion or high blood pressure from all that you've eaten. Now you need this, you need your, what's a little blue pill, like all these different things. It's Big Pharma and Big Farm that are funding the media. They can't run these type of, the type of video that you just saw or go undercover in these CAFOs because they'll lose a lot of their advertisers. Same thing with the government. Where do the political officials get a lot of their money? Big Broccoli just doesn't have the kind of funds that Big Dairy and Big Cow and those other operations have. So they need to get reelected, so they need the money. And then, why doesn't your doctor tell you? Good question. Do you realize that most doctors don't have any nutrition training? Our medical system is totally focused on treat, not prevent. As Clive was saying, doctors don't make a lot of money when you're well. So what's their motivation? As well, the medical schools are funded significantly by Big Pharma. Most people don't know that back in the 60s, the doctors would be in the room with you talking about your treatment that you needed while they're smoking a cigarette. So most doctors recommended Camels more than any other cigarette. And going back to the government, let me tell you, there were over 7,000 studies done over a period of 25 years before the Surgeon General issued the very first report that said, cigarettes might be bad for you. I think it's just a matter of time, and it's really not that far away, that people will realize that diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy could be as harmful to health as smoking. Normal, again, people eat different foods. Today, in Mexico, Germany, Japan, countries that I like to visit, people eat horses. All right, necessary is the one that tripped me up and kept me from being vegan for years. But let's look at how people live in the blue zones. There are 5 areas of the world where people regularly live to be in their hundreds. And what do? Well, there's a number of things that contribute to their longevity, and they don't get heart disease or cancers or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or diabetes and those kinds of things. And dominantly plants, 95% plus plant-based. I love this quote by Dr. Kim Williams, past president of American College of Cardiology. There are 2 kinds of cardiologists, vegans and those who haven't read the data. And if you're looking for a good present for anybody, especially yourself, this is one of the best books ever. It's called How Not to Die. And Dr. Michael Greger says that to prevent, treat, or reverse every single one of the 15 leading causes of death in the United States, eat a plant-based diet. What are those 15 leading causes of death? Well, heart disease, lung disease, brain disease, digestive cancers, infections, diabetes, high blood pressure, liver diseases, blood cancers, kidney disease, breast cancer, suicidal depression, prostate cancer, Parkinson's disease, and iatrogenic causes. That means you weren't taking care of yourself and you did end up in the doctor, at the hospital and they did something wrong. So iatrogenic causes. How many of you have either had one of these or know somebody who has, right? Pretty much everybody. Don't you wish that your loved one that suffered and or died, that you could have said, hey, read this chapter, and maybe just by changing their diet, they could have lived longer, much longer life? I wish I'd known this when my father was suffering from cancer. He died at the young age of 67. That's us at my Harvard graduation. I wish I'd known that eating a plant-based diet would help with depression, and maybe my 18-year-old, my son, would not have taken his life when he was 18. We were big meat eaters then. I wish I'd known throughout my life, while I've struggled with being heavy, fat, overweight, the overweight girl walking down the airplane aisle and everybody's diverting their eyes because they hope that the fat girl doesn't sit next to them, right? The overweight girl that hated to see her pictures on Facebook. Anyway, I'm glad that now I'm not skinny, but I don't have to worry about my weight anymore. I eat foods that flow through me. Guess what, guys? Plants are made of fiber. Animal foods have no fiber. So where do they go? I think they kind of go into your body, not out of your body. Look at Venus and Serena Williams, dominating the courts still, beating girls, women that are half their age. Same thing with Tom Brady, multiple winner of Super Bowls. And what does Arnold Schwarzenegger say about a vegan diet? Let's hear from Arnie. Oops.
One and only Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I ate a lot of meat. They showed us commercials.
Steak. That's what a man eats.
Selling that idea that real men eat meat.
Serious man food.
But you got to understand, that's marketing. That's not based on reality.
I've been teaching fighting techniques to government agencies for more than 15 years. Then I got injured. Unable to teach for at least 6 months, I spent more than 1,000 hours studying science on recovery and nutrition, and stumbled across a study about the Roman gladiators.
The gladiators were predominantly vegetarian.
How could the original professional fighters be so powerful, eating only plants?
When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, I qualified for my 3rd Olympic team. I broke 2 American records. I was like, man, I should have done this a long while ago.
When I went plant-based, I wasn't sure if I was gonna survive. And I actually became like a machine.
One of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein to perform at a high level. That's just not true.
Sometimes you have to do things that you know your competitors aren't doing.
Today's blood and yesterday's blood. So,
I think this is going to wake a lot of people up.
I was recovering better, not getting as sore. This was our best season in the last 15 years, and we had 14 guys on plant-based diets.
We all want to feel great, have more energy.
Cholesterol was 276. Today, 169.
Whoa, now you're talking.
Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me.
It's not one set of dietary guidelines for improving your performance as an athlete, another one for reversing heart disease, reversing diabetes. It's the same for all of them.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?
Well, This is only showing Monday night, all across the country. Theaters across the country already have my tickets. So Monday, whatever city you're in, you can still probably get tickets. I hope you can, because I hope it's sold out, honestly. But great show. It's gonna change the world, really. So in our anarchist movement, we're constantly hearing, well, who's going to pave the roads? And of course, we have answers for that. And in the vegan movement, we're constantly hearing, where do you get your protein? So the good news is, all food has protein. Watermelon has protein. And look at this, spinach, 49% protein compared to chicken at only 23% protein. That's a shocker, right? When I first went vegan, yes, I worried, and I did a little bit of extra protein powders and that sort of thing, but I don't worry about it anymore. I don't think about it. It's not an issue. And for those of you who say, well, I really think it still is because we're conditioned that way, much like we're conditioned for statism, the book Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis is fantastic. 80%, how our obsession with meat is killing us and what we can do about it. Great book. And here's the even better news. The healthiest diet on the planet. Why, the foods you love, pizza, pancake, potatoes, pasta, and more, are the solution to preventing disease and looking and feeling your best. Almost everybody I talk to are like, oh, I eat so badly, I eat so many carbs. I'm like, carbs are not the problem, guys. A great movie, if you want to see more about the connection between the money and your health, and why you don't know, why we aren't being told the truth, is the movie What the Health. All right, let's talk about natural. People will say, oh, I've got these carnivorous teeth. Well, do you really think that you could chase down an animal? If you were made to eat animals, do you think you could chase down an animal and with your bare hands and your teeth and eat it raw, and that would work well with your digestive system? No, our teeth are not, we're not obligate carnivores. Lions and your cat, if you have a cat, they're obligate carnivores. They have to eat animals, but we don't. Our digestive tract is much more like a herbivore than a carnivore as well, with our long intestines and long digestive system. And for those of you who are real concerned about the environment, which I know a lot of people are, animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction. That's Richard Oppenlander. If you want more about that, you should see the movie Cowspiracy, available on Netflix and other places, but they go into detail on this. So the final issue of carnism and why it exists and we just don't think about it, we don't know about it, is because there's just such abstractions and absurdities that go along with what we're taught. You know, racism allowed us a long time ago to do unspeakable things to other people because they were different from us. Racism and statism have allowed atrocities throughout the world, like in Vietnam, when they were told to go into the villages and whatever's walking, crawling, or growing, just kill it. Just kill it. And think of all the Asians, again, people that are different from us, with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, just blowing up hundreds of thousands of people. Well, I suggest that one day we will see speciesism the same way we're seeing these atrocities and say, my goodness, I just hope I live long enough, and I think I will, that people will look at us and say, you ate animals, live animals that were killed for you to eat? Are you kidding? That's crazy. Just the way that we look at slavery and other atrocities now. So carnism's the mentality that causes us to turn someone into something and to reduce a life to that unit of production, that bag of, that tray of meat at the grocery store, or that plate of baby back ribs. So in all social movements, there's 3 stages of truth. First, it's mocked and ridiculed. Then there's denial and violent opposition. And we're seeing this a lot right now with all the media that says, oh, those plant-based burgers are not good for you. Those plant-based soy is not good for you, those sorts of things. And then finally, we see acceptance. All right, so maybe some of you are saying, hey, Gina, I'll give it a try. What do I do? Well, Terry Brock is my partner back there. The very first week the Impossible Burger was out, we stopped by a Burger King and tried that. Quite good. You can get Beyond Meat patties at your grocery store. You can get Beyond Meat burgers at a lot of different places, and all kinds of substitute foods. In your freezer, a lot of grocery stores carry from Plant Pure Nation these frozen dinners that are quite good. They're no oil, they're whole foods, they're very healthy, and there's a variety of them. So you can order them online. You can get them by the dozens, or you can find them in your grocery store, or you can just order the cookbook and cook it up yourself. That's even healthier. If you like those meal plans, the meal kits where they deliver things to you and put it all together, Purple Carrot has all plans, including a high-protein line by Tom Brady. An easy substitute that I learned to do when I cook, I don't cook a whole lot, but when I do, if it said ground beef, I would use black beans. If it said shrimp or chicken or something like that, I would just open a can of beans. Because a lot of what meat is just a transmission device for sauce. I wanted the tikka masala sauce. I didn't care if it had chicken or beans, right? I want the spaghetti sauce and the taste of spaghetti. So what if it has beans instead of ground beef? It was really a very easy substitution to make. Last night at the dinner, for the speaker dinner, they had a wonderful vegan meal. Thank you guys very much for doing that. Those of you who are speakers and who are vegan, please stand. You're vegan or mostly vegan as a speaker, okay? All right, all of the rest of you who are vegan or trending vegan and mostly vegan, please stand. Keep standing, Chuck. Wow, a lot of you guys. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, thank you. So look around the room, and you see who those people are. Ask them, what do you do? How do you eat? Right at 50% of the dinners last night for the speaker dinner were vegan. This is one of my favorite apps, Happy Cow. I use it all the time. I've used it several times on this trip. It helps you find vegan and veg-friendly restaurants that are near you. This is how I found yesterday Palladium. It's Philadelphia Eagles sort of restaurant that's just right around the corner. It's a sports bar, but on the menu they have a nice little vegan section. We had the vegan chicken wings and we had a vegan pizza, so it's quite good. It's less than a 5-minute walk. At Hip City Veg, which has several locations in Philly and DC and other places, they have fantastic burgers, a great Philly cheesesteak and a smokehouse burger. So Hip City Veg, I highly recommend, especially for those of you that are based in this area. All right, so you're vegan, trending vegan, and let me just say that it's not all or nothing, and vegan is not just a way to eat. The vegan philosophy basically means that I'm going to live my life as best I can without doing harm to any living being. Does that mean that if I'm driving along and my car runs over insects or a snake or something, that I'm not vegan anymore? I didn't lose my veganity. No, I did not lose my veganity. That just means that I'm still doing the best I can. I did not intend to run over the snake. I'm doing the best I can, and that's what trending vegan and being vegan is all about. You're doing the best you can to cause the least harm. If you'd like to join my free Facebook group, I know Facebook's kind of statist and not real popular with this crowd, but we do have some good discussions in there about ways to eat healthier, and we don't do a lot on the ethics part in there right now, but we do a lot about the ways to eat healthier and to incorporate more plants into your diet. And that's another thing, just incorporate more plants into your diet. Oh, here's another tip. Let me just go back to another tip for if you want to make the switch. Again, it's not all or nothing. You don't necessarily need to walk out here today and say, I'm never going to eat another bite. What some people do is they'll take it in phases. So 1 week, cut out cows. The next week, cut out pigs. The next week, cut out chickens. The next week, cut out fish. The next week, cut out eggs. The next week, cut out dairy. That's a phased approach that works for a lot of people, so everything's not quite so drastic. And you learn about the substitutions and how easy it is to make them. So in closing, I want you to remember that every bite you take is either fighting disease or feeding it, helping the environment or hurting it, reducing violence, increasing violence, or reducing violence. And I love this quote by Martin Luther King that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And that's why I came here to speak about this topic, because it's very important to me. And if I can help any one of you, and I know there's several over the years because I've spoken at a few of these events who've told me that I've helped them and that they've been able to get off their diabetes medicine and off the heart blood pressure medicine and all those things, and they're happier, much happier, because they're not hurting animals. And Gary Yourofsky's a fantastic animal activist, and he says, good people don't talk about nonviolence. They practice it every single minute of every day. And with that, I thank you very much.
Up next, we have a little bit of a change of pace. We have the creator of the Gematria calculator. I know I was supposed to say, was it Gematrinator? He told me 4 times, and I still haven't got it right. The Gematrinator calculator. This is Derek Tikkuri. Let's get a round of applause. Come on. He's a good guy. You want to hold it? You want this here?
That's good. Yeah, that should work. Whose computer is this? Okay, go ahead. Yep, and we got HDMI out? Yep. No, it's I gotta do Fin F5 on here, which works. Excellent. All right. We all set? Okay, let's see how this works here. Hello. Hey, everybody. How's it going today? All right, good to hear. My name is Derek Tikkuri. I built the Gematrinator calculator. If I could get a quick show of hands of people who are familiar with Gematria, maybe use my website. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So a quick background on me. About 2015, 2016, I started to wake up, and I began looking on YouTube for truth. I started looking at these mass shootings and thought something's going on. And I had always been more or less of a, I was always passively interested in conspiracies. But it wasn't until 2015, 2016 where I realized we are being lied to on a grand, grand scale that I think a lot of us, some of us even here maybe don't fully comprehend. Dig in for notes here. So, in my journey for truth, I came across the work of Zachary K. Hubbard, and he was talking about this language of Gematria. And to me at the time, I thought, man, this seems a little crazy. And I wanted to call him crazy, but I realized I felt like I was learning something throughout this whole adventure. And the tools he was using, I thought were a little subpar because I wanted to study this more myself. So I had a programming background. I worked for GE Healthcare, run a supply chain there. And I thought, all right, well, let me build a calculator and see if I can take a look at this, look at how we spell our numbers, how we spell our dates. Is there something to this? And shortly thereafter, I came to the conclusion that not only is this language true in that I believe the dark occult is using this to fabricate news stories to keep us in a state of fear, but that one thing I couldn't explain to people is why the occult is using this language. And as I started to pay attention to my own life and look at my own numerology, the numerology of people I knew, the dates on which we were born, I found something very, very fascinating. And a lot of people here this week have talked about the fact that we are infinite beings, that we're here for an experience, and then we may come back, things like that. It's my belief that that is absolutely true, and that there's actually numerical evidence of this. Now, the practice of gematria is rooted in the Kabbalah, which is the ancient belief that God created the world by merging the number and the letter. This is a concept that's so important to ancient mystery religions that the Bible begins with God speaking the world into existence. So, when I first named this presentation, I called it Awakening to the Geometric Universe as Expressed Through Language. And I came to find out that this had the same numerical value, and we'll talk about these ciphers momentarily, as my full name. And of course, this could be a coincidence, absolutely, maybe it is. But by the end of this presentation, you may actually wonder whether or not that's true. So we're going to be looking at this code a little bit. Now, me, myself, of course, I'm not a scientist, but there have been things that I've been very fascinated by throughout the years. One of these things being the double slit experiment, something that blew me away when I first heard about it. And this is the idea that electrons behave differently based on whether or not they are being observed at a quantum level. They behave like a wave when they're shot through a double slit, but when we try to figure out which slit they're going through, they suddenly act like a particle, and we see only two lines. There's also something called the phantom DNA effect, which is a study by a pair of quantum biologists. And this study also really opened my eyes. First off, they started by scattering photons in a vacuum and placed human DNA inside and found that when the DNA was added, no other objects worked. But the protons would take on a different pattern in the presence of that DNA. So they took this further. They removed DNA from a person and placed it in a separate room. The subject was then shown videos designed to elicit emotion, war footage, comedy, erotic images. The DNA, which was in another room, was found to emit electrical responses at the exact same moment that the person experienced these emotional peaks and dips. They took this further. They moved the DNA up to 350 miles away, and they discovered that the DNA was still having the same electrical impulse. And this worked not just with videos and imagery, but if the person was just meditating, trying to bring up an emotion of their own, they were still experiencing the same thing. And the DNA would actually change shape based on the type of emotion that the subject focused on. So this tells us something about our reality. Perhaps that a previously unrecognized type of energy exists. This is the underlying field of energy connecting all living tissues that cells and DNA are actually using to communicate with one another. And this must occur at a quantum level because this is not limited by the speed of light. And to our normal understanding of standard science, that should be impossible. So it's some scientists' conclusion. Of course, the science community is split on a lot of things like this, but generally, this energy field is indicative of sort of a matrix of energy that connects everything and everyone in the universe. And this DNA in our bodies actually gives us access to the energy that connects our universe, and the emotion that we experience is the key to tapping into this. And this is why you see this pop up in literature. This is something that is known and something that I believe they are trying to clue us into. This is why you have things like the law of attraction, for instance, The Secret, the idea that if you just believe and truly desire something, again, not from your own ego, but from your true spiritual self, these things will manifest on a different level. Certain people will enter your lives and help you along your path. And, think about the movie The Matrix. To me, we're going to talk about this movie a little bit. Think about how the word matrix has the same base word as gematria, the M-A-T-R-I, of course, material, maternal, matrimony, all of the same idea. And it's my belief that films like The Matrix, shows like Touch, even Star Wars, which uses the Force, this invisible force that connects everything, this is a way of trying to clue us into the reality that we are living in. So quickly, let's look at these ciphers and just look at essentially how basic they are. First of all, we start with the alphabetic order. This cipher numbers the alphabet 1 through 26, each letter relative to its position in the alphabet. From this alphabetic order, we can also derive the reduction method, and this is also called Pythagorean. Some people call it Agrippan gematria. You're using the rules of numerology to take the double-digit numbers down to a single digit. So the letter J, which is the 10th letter, 1 plus 0 is 1. K, the 11th letter, 1 plus 1 is 2. You get to S, you see it's 19. 1 plus 9 is 10, then you have to reduce it again 1 plus 0 is 1. So when we find the numeric values of words, phrases, dates, numbers, things like that, certainly there's a number of patterns. Now, there's also two complementary ciphers called reverse gematria. Now, the majority of this presentation is going to focus on the alphabetic order, the standard rules of numerology, but the reverse order is absolutely relevant. And with those ciphers alone, I believe you can look at the mainstream media and see that there's something very, very fishy going on. Now, I would never suggest anyone do this, but if you or I were to go around New York City and drop empty rice cookers on the street, it's not going to make top story on CNN that day. However, back on the 16th of August, that's exactly what happened. A man was caught after dropping empty rice cookers around the city. Now, if you think about the date, August 16th, written 16/8 internationally, using the standard alphabetic order, New York City equals 168. In the reverse order, rice cooker 168. Then we found out, after noticing this and saying, hey, this is a fake news story, then they told us the suspect was from West Virginia, 168. In the alphabetic order, Massachusetts equals 168. And remember, pressure cooker bombs were used at the Boston Marathon bombing. In Gematria, Boston Marathon bombing sums to 330. This news story fell 330 weeks after the Boston Marathon bombing. By the way, Massachusetts and New York, two states that both sum to 33 in reduction. So this is what the news does. To me, it's about keeping us in a perpetual state of fear. Now, they've done a lot of studies and found that people who are reminded of their mortality and then faced with a financial decision always make poor decisions. And to me, this is another case of how they're reminding us of terrorism. And anybody here familiar with the Family Guy episode that aired before the Boston Marathon bombing, in which Peter Griffin drove through the Boston Marathon and killed a bunch of people? Does anyone remember? Show of hands. A couple of you, okay. Well, the man who was arrested for this story, his last name was Griffin, just like Peter Griffin from the Family Guy. Just a quick glance at a couple other ciphers. These are called the large number ciphers, and this is where coincidences become really difficult to ignore. And what you're looking at on the right is the ancient Hebrew Gematria chart. So this language of letters and numbers comes from the Old Testament. Hebrew Gematria was the language of the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Torah. And this same cipher, 1 through 10, 20 through 100, and then up by 100 after that, this is also in the English alphabetic order. We're also going to glance at the Jewish and Latin cipher. This cipher is based in the ancient Latin alphabetic order, and the more modern English characters are placed at the end. This is a sourced cipher. We're looking at, essentially it's been derived from a various Masonic texts. And, you know, Latin seems like the more accurate term. When I came across it, it was called Jewish Gematria on Gematrix, a couple other websites, so that's what it's titled there. Now we're going to pick on the Freemasons a little bit. Look at their numerology, for instance. We start with the 47th problem of Euclid. And Freemasonry, of course, rooted in ancient, they were builders. The secrets of building had to be passed on through these societies. And in Freemasonry, there's something called the 47th problem of Euclid about establishing foundation. Now, the word foundation in the reduction method sums to 47, so how appropriate that this is the 47th problem. And 47 is a very significant number. This goes back to the sun, and we're going to talk about how the sun and moon really connects and brings all this together. The sun travels 47 degrees between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. The word time in the alphabetic order equals 47, and it moves around the equator, which is the middle of the earth. Middle equals 47. Also think about the distance, or the directions, north, east, west, and south. That sums to 47 in reverse. This number 47 is something that the government loves to stamp over a lot of their news articles. 47 is the gematria of the word authority. And think about how when you go to a courtroom, you're expected to obey the judge. Both obey and judge sums to 47 in ordinal. Government gives us the number 47. President, White House, 47. And whether you vote Democrat or Republican, it's the same side of the different side of the same coin. 47 in both reduction methods. Now, in extended gematria, we look at the numbers 47, or the word foundation. First, public speaking. I'm going to mix up some words. It'll happen. We get the value 740. And 47 and 74 have a very deep esoteric connection. 7 is the fourth prime number. And when we talk about 4, you need 4 corners to a building. The fourth book of the Bible, for instance, is Numbers. And when you write out the words fourth and prime, you get a numeric value of 74, homage to the fact that 7 is the fourth prime number. In fact, think about the national holiday here in America, Independence Day. Falls on the date 7/4. And in Gematria, Independence Day sums to 74. So does the word holiday. This practice that we're looking at today is called Simple English Gematria. And using the standard alphabetic order, Simple English and Gematria all sum to 74. As we get towards the end of this presentation and talk about what we call the organic matrix, we'll see how this practice is sort of a form of divination similar to tarot. Tarot is another word that sums to 74 as well. The United States, a Masonic nation, notice Masonic equals 74. So here on the top left, we're looking at the emblem of Freemasonry with the capital G, the compass and square. This compass is set to 47 degrees. And that's interesting because the compass is used to draw the circle. The circle sums to 47. And we're talking about prime numbers with 7 and 4. Well, 47 itself is a prime number. The 15th prime number. What's the 15th letter of the alphabet? It's a circle. In fact, the word gematria has the same gematria as the circle. 52, 353, and 233 in our primary ciphers. And understand, there are a lot of numbers that we're looking at today, and I want to be clear that numbers like 47, 74, these are important. Keep your mind on those. The most important part is to understand that these words and phrases do match. The actual numbers that they all result to, try not to get lost in this sea of numbers at the moment, because it's a lot. So I'll try to be cautious as we go forward. Now, there's something interesting about, there's a connection between the forwards and backwards alphabetic order. For instance, the word love sums to 54, whether you write it out forwards or backwards in the reverse order. The word geometry, also with the same property, and gematria is the exhibition of geometry within the language. The father of geometry, Euclid, whose 47th problem we looked at earlier, his name equals 108 in the reverse alphabetic order. Now, as far as numbers to remember, definitely try to remember this number here. When we're talking about the circle, we're talking about a shape with 360 degrees. Using the alphabetic order, 360 equals 227. And you're probably looking at this number and not thinking terribly much of it at the moment, but this is a very, very significant number. If you go to look at the life of Pi, for instance, you'll see that the main character survived 227 days in that film. The publication date, by the way, September 11th, 2001 for this film. We'll talk about how September 11th was a circle pi ritual as we go forward. So 22 divided by 7 gives us the first 3 digits of pi on a calculator, and this is why this number is so significant. It's connected to the mathematics of the circle. If anyone has a Windows keyboard, you'll find Alt 227 gives you the pi symbol. And in the alphabetic order, when you spell out 22 divided by 7, you get a numeric value of 314. So, if you call this a coincidence, got a t-shirt for you, it says Coincidence Theorist. And this in and of itself might be pretty interesting, but we're going to look at more and more about how these 227s and 314s continue to pop up. We're going to touch a little bit on this Jewish cipher, and it has a very mystical connection to the English alphabet. To begin with, the word pi in Latin gematria sums to 69. That's the alphabetic order value in English of circles. Without the S, circle equals 50. And where is the circle on the Jewish chart? Well, we see it right there with the numeric value of 50. By the way, America in the alphabetic order, just bring my calculator up here. America equals 50. 50 states, make sense? So we saw how 22 divided by 7 equals 314. If we drop this to a 1 through 27, 22 divided by 7 equals 315. And, of course, 22 divided by 7 lies in between those two numbers. So definitely I believe there's a deep mystical connection between the mathematics of the circle and these two ciphers. Now, when we look back at ancient times, the ancients looked up in the sky and they saw a circle every day, every night, the moon. And this study of gematria comes from the Kabbalah, which has the 10 spheres, the 10 Sephiroth. And this is how Kabbalists receive light, or a little more knowledge about the workings of reality. Just want to point out that the word moon and Kabbalah has the same gematria in the ancient Hebrew language. In English, Kabbalah also equals 38. And this study that we're looking at today, gematria, also 38 in reduction. Now, if you measure the distance from new moon to new moon, this is called a lunar phase. It's a period of about 29.5 days, just a fraction over it. And if you write out 29.5 days, again in the alphabetic order, it equals 314, bringing us right back to pi. There's something called the Saros cycle in astronomy. Every 223 lunar phases, we get an eclipse from the same Saros cycle. In Hebrew gematria, the moon equals 223. In English gematria, the first number to sum to 314 when you write it out is 223. Even the diameter of the moon is coded into the language, believe it or not. Now, if you look up the diameter of the moon, it'll give you about like 2158, 2159. The devil's in the details, though. If you actually look at the equatorial radius of the moon and then do your calculations, because they won't give you this knowledge straightforward, when you use that and look at the diameter of the moon at the equator, you get a number 2160. 2,160 miles has the same gematria as the moon in our extended cipher, 423. But this number, 216, is connected to the number 666. And I think many of us are familiar with the idea that the number 666 is very significant to the occult. When you write out this phrase, mathematics of the circle, and I really did think this was a coincidence for a long time, you get the gematria of 216. 216 is the product of 6 times 6 times 6. The gematria of the moon added to the Roman numerals, 2160 equals 666. In ordinal and reverse, the moon equals 90 and 99, which is 666 upside down. The Earth lies on a 66.6 degree tilt, according to the sun, that angle there that you're looking at. Also, they call it the number of man in the Bible, and this could be because of the carbon-12 atom. 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. So in Latin gematria, when you write out 666, you get this value of 2038. Now I want you to understand that 0 in the results of these is not a number. 0 is actually the absence of a number. And this sticks out because the moon is an average of 238,000 miles from the Earth. Now, what if you were to write it out 666? Well, now you get the number 2083. The moon equals 283, but more interesting is that 2083 is the 314th prime number. So, mathematics of the circle, just to review, summing to 666. 666, when written out, sums to the 314th prime. So, I contend that our language is deeply, deeply coded with this ideology. And when we think about the solar system and how it operates, there's this very interesting alignment between the moon and Saturn. And some people believe Saturn used to be the old sun of the Earth. They call it the black sun at times. And there's certainly a lot of significance. It was the furthest planet away that the ancients were able to observe. And there's a very interesting thing about these two objects. First of all, the moon has an orbital period, like we discussed, of 29.5 days. Well, isn't it interesting that Saturn takes almost the exact same number of years to orbit the sun? Now, that in itself is interesting enough, but when you look at these two numbers on the left, they're off by 1/400th. And that is the exact ratio of the moon in relation to the sun. It's 1/400th the size, and it's 1/400th the distance. And there is an alignment between the sun and Saturn coded into the language. Saturn, using the alphabetic order, equals 93, and the sun is said to be an average of 93 million miles away. On the other side of the coin, sun equals 54, and the sun and Saturn become conjunct every 54 weeks in the sky. All right, now the fun part. Does anyone remember in 2018 when Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, sent a Tesla Roadster with Starman into orbit? I think a lot of people laughed at this. Even Elon Musk laughed at it. He said, "Oh, you know it's real because it looks so fake." David Bowie has the same gematria as SpaceX, and if you recall, when Starman was launched to space, he was playing 2 David Bowie songs on infinite loop. I told you to remember the number 227, and this is one of the reasons why. Measuring from the death of David Bowie to the date of this launch was exactly 2 years and 27 days. Now, 227 is a prime number that's not divisible by anything other than 1 and itself. David Bowie equals 49. His music was launched in a Tesla Roadster, which equals 49. The rocket that launched the car was the Falcon Heavy, 49. The 2 songs that were playing on loop were Space Oddity, 49. Life on Mars was the other song, 49. And the occupant of the vehicle was named Starman, which sums to 49 in the reverse order. So this is a prime example of how these upper Masonic rituals are being carried out by the numbers in accordance with a code. So we've been talking about the sun and the moon, and of course, when we're talking about them, we need to talk about the intersection of those 2 objects, which is a total solar eclipse. Personally, I went to go see the total solar eclipse in 2017. Blew my mind. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. If you get the opportunity to do it, please try to. It'll open your eyes. It's awesome. And I just threw that out there because, well, we'll talk about my journey to the eclipse with the organic matrix later. Now, in Hebrew Gematria, the phrase for total eclipse, which translates more accurately to full eclipse in English, but it is what they use, this sums to 227. And in English, total eclipse and the circle both sum to 47. Well, David Bowie was born in the year 47. I want to point out how the word eclipse and circles have the same gematria. And of course, an eclipse is an intersection of the 2 biggest circles in the sky. Furthermore, that shape that you see in the middle of the intersection is called a vesica Piscis. Vesica Piscis in solar eclipse, also with the same gematria. In our extended cipher, which again is built from the ancient Hebrew chart, David Bowie equals 994. That's the same exact number as total solar eclipse. And if you measure from his death to the next total solar eclipse, you get 59 days. Measuring from his death to the Great American Total Solar Eclipse, a span of 590 days. David Bowie equals 59 in reverse reduction. And this is the code that repeats itself over and over and over and over again, almost every time we decode a serious celebrity death. It's at the point where I'm now able to call a date ahead of time and say, we're going to lose a major celebrity on this date, and pretty much without fail it happens. So we mentioned the number 69 earlier. This is the number that draws pi and circles together. Well, the word eclipse also equals 69 in the alphabetic order. And the real clincher with this ritual is that on David Bowie's 69th birthday, which was just 2 days before he died, he released an album called Black Star. Interesting, right? Considering that a total solar eclipse darkens our star. In fact, if you look on the bottom, you can see different phases of an obscured star. So this is a very clear nod to the total solar eclipse code. The name of the album, Black Star, sums to 156, which is the Hebrew value of eclipse. And this is a very significant number because an eclipse always occurs 1, 5, or 6 months, lunar phases, after the most recent one. So why this whole crucifixion code, or the solar eclipse code? Where does this come from? Why are they doing it this way? Well, again, this code of letters and numbers of Gematria is rooted in the Bible, which is completely coded with Gematria. In fact, on my website, you can download the King James Bible, which is what they use as the Masonic Bible, and it has each and every verse decoded for you right there. It tells you what verse of the Bible it is, and so on. It's very comprehensive. So we find that Jesus' crucifixion equals 227. Also, this phrase, eclipse crucifixion code 227. September the 11th, the date of the biggest eclipse ritual, sums to 227 as well. And this goes further. You know, it's like an onion. The more layers you peel, the further you get. The 227th prime number is 1433. That's the extended value of September the 11th, eclipse crucifixion code. There's 3 Bible verses in the Gospels that discuss darkness falling over the sky in the middle of the day during the crucifixion. The first one we're looking at is the 33rd verse of Mark 15. Jesus was crucified at the age of 33, and there's a little bit of a debate about this, but if you look up at Roman Catholic, Lutheran literature, they've pretty much concluded that the date of the crucifixion was April 3rd, 33 AD. This Bible verse gives us Gematria of 33 squared. Crucifixion of Jesus Christ equals 303. And you'll see on the right side in Latin Gematria, the word 33 has the same Gematria as ritual human sacrifice. And this whole idea of Gematria paints a very dark picture of the world at times. Again, towards the end of this, I'm going to show you how numbers contain duality. And this is actually cluing us into something and what I think is our real power and what we really are as beings in this world. There's 2 other verses in the Gospels that discuss darkness falling over the sky during the crucifixion. And all of these verses mention that it was darkness from the 6th hour to the 9th hour. Interesting, because eclipse equals 69. The 69th prime number, 347, this verse here has Gematria of 347. The Hebrew word for sacrifice appears to sum to 347 as well. And again, this idea of eclipse, sacrifice, this is something that's been around since ancient times and appears to be the case today. So earlier we touched on Saturn, summing to 93, its connection to the sun, which is 93 million miles away. In the alphabetic order, God's Son equals 93. So does the words crucifix. Jesus was from Nazareth. Christianity, even 930 in our Sumerian cipher. And think about how in the Bible, the first man, Adam, lived to the age of 930. The New Testament, the Gospels, begin with the 930th chapter of the Bible. It goes on. Christ was crucified on April 3rd, the 93rd day of the year. And the crucifixion took place between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. when you take the ancient Hebrew times and convert them to what we currently observe. Since I'm a little crunched for time, so I just want to point out that there's this very deep code with Jewish Gematria, and I've studied hundreds and hundreds of total solar eclipses. Remember, these are rare events. They only occur about 7 times per decade. And out of the hundreds and hundreds of eclipses that I've looked at, this is the only one that I've seen that never touches a major body of water. You'll see the path of totality stays on land throughout the entire time. And this is almost impossible with a total solar eclipse. It takes a perfect alignment. And there was only this was the only total solar eclipse in 1331. 1331 eclipse equals 1331. It happened on November 30th, which is the only date that sums to 1331. This number is connected to 33. 1331 is 11 cubed. 33 is 11 plus 11 plus 11. Even the numbers 133 and 331 both sum to 1331. So I just want to point out that there's something very, very deep about this code. And the rest of the presentation doesn't talk much about 1331, but this is something I talk about in a lot of my work. But we're going to look at more examples of this eclipse crucifixion code. So using the alphabetic order, the name Jesus equals 74. And in the New Testament, he dies on a cross. The words cross, Messiah, gospel, and parables all contain numeric values of 74. Even Jesus Christ in reverse reduction gives us a 74. Well, the word rapper equals 74. So does the word killing. And the deaths of major rappers seem to be exclusively centered around this eclipse code. Let's start with looking at the deaths of the notorious B.I.G. and Tupac. Notice how both men have two names that sum to 74. Notorious B.I.G. with the S exception, and Biggie Smalls in reverse. Meanwhile, Tupac, his name equals 74 in reverse. His other artist name was Machiavelli, which sums to 74 in ordinal. The name Biggie equals 39 in the alphabetic order. So does the word eclipse in reverse reduction. Biggie died on the date 3/9. It was the date of the only total solar eclipse in 1997. His name, Christopher Wallace, and Eclipse Sacrifice both equal 97. His name also sums to 290, like Eclipse Sacrifice. The name Christ in Jewish Gematria equals 290. And then we look at Tupac. Tupac Shakur in ordinal sums to 139. He died on the date 13/9, 22 years ago yesterday. And then his full name has the same digits, rearranged differently. Now, Tupac did not die on the same date of a total solar eclipse, but look at his real name, Lassane Crooks. That has the exact same gematria as total eclipse in all four base ciphers. And the date he died, also 137 and 47 numerology. To obtain date numerologies, we go date plus month, and then the 19 or 20 plus the 2-digit year. And we'll touch on a couple more examples of this as we go. But think of it as, a couple ciphers for the date. Just like we have a couple ciphers for each phrase, each date has a cipher as well. I hope that's not my battery alert. All right. Now, we all know that YouTube censorship has been a big problem, and my channel was deleted back in February of 2018. And this is when my videos just started to go viral, because I actually went ahead and said that on the date June 18th, a few days ahead of time, I said June 18th has tremendous alignments with total solar eclipses, particularly the two that pass over the United States in 2017 and 2024. And I said, we are going to see a major celebrity death today. Not only did we get one, but we got two. In fact, a second rapper was shot on the same day. That was the date that #1 artists on the Billboard charts, XXXTentacion, was killed. And the numbers that I used to predict the date were found in his numerology. His name equals 151 in reverse, which is the ordinal value of Jesus Christ, and the date he died, June 18th. In reverse, Jesus Christ equals 146. He was 146 days after his birthday. And his birthday has the same numbers as crucifixion of Jesus Christ. This riddle goes deeper and deeper. I have a lot of work on this. Even his killer who was arrested he had a cross tattooed on his face, and it's like, well, we know what they're doing. This is a rapper too who claimed he might get sacrificed in the future. Also, back in 2017, we had the suspicious death of Chris Cornell, and we're talking about the eclipse crucifixion code. Could you have found a picture that's more Jesus-like than this on Wikipedia? His initials, Chris Cornell, have that CC. Remember, the word eclipse equals 33. If you measure from the date of his death to the Great American Total Solar Eclipse later that year, it was 3 months and 3 days. The name Chris equals 33. He died at the MGM, which equals 33. Then at his funeral, his good friend Chester Bennington sang. His name is Chester Charles, giving us another CC, 33. Chester Bennington died later that year, and he died a span of 33 days before the same eclipse. Chester equals 33. He died on the 33rd parallel. Again, the word eclipse equals 33. Now, both, this is interesting too. Chris Cornell born on the date of the moon landing. Chester Bennington died on the date of the moon landing. In ordinal, moon landing equals 118. These two men were born exactly 11 years and 8 months apart. And of course, the fake moon landing from 69, fake moon landing equals 69. It was on the date July 20th, which equals 69. And this is what happens when you get a government agency whose gematria equals 666, like National Aeronautics and Space Administration in reverse. So the moon was always a very fascinating thing to me. I always stood outside and would just stare at it, when I was younger. I loved it. I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. It seemed too large to be in the sky. And, as I began looking deeper into this study, and please keep in mind, a couple of these things that I'll be sharing, particularly about my personal relationships, might seem kind of strange and bizarre, but if I wasn't presenting the full picture to you, I'd feel like I'd be a little dishonest here. And as far as why the occult likes this code, I believe it's because they have a deep understanding that we do live in a matrix of sorts in which things are really happening by the numbers, and the dates on which we were born and die are significant. So I found it pretty interesting that my name, my last name, Tikkuri, does have the same gematria as the moon, and I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. So I dug deeper, and I wanted to look at what the moon looked like when I was born. During this research, I discovered that there's something called a Brown lunation number. They actually began counting lunar phases back in the year 1923. The date that this began was January 17th, and that's the first date on the calendar that sums to 227. January 17th also happens to be 227 days after my birthday. And when I look up my lunation number, I was born during the 772nd lunation. My name in gematria equals 772. Of course, these are the same digits as 227, just reversed. My first gematria video, we start talking about the number 227. And in fact, I got on a Skype call with a friend of mine in Serbia. We hashed out all these notes. We're going to this is going to be the flow of it. It's going to be perfect. So we start with 227. Well, by the time the notes were done, I said, I think we're good. This is exactly how it's got to go. I think we're fine. I said, what time is it over there in Serbia? He goes, it's 7:22 a.m. I said, oh, what a coincidence. Let's end the call now. That's good. Well, then the next day I came back, and he's got messages in all caps. He's like, look at the call time. The call time was exactly 2 hours and 27 minutes to the second. Then the file that I made for this video was 777 megabytes. That's the first number to sum to 314 without the and. So essentially what I'm getting at is that the more you pay attention to this code, the more you start to look at the numerology of your own life, things seem to begin to manifest around that numerology. So everyone stands up here and says that we can control our future, we can control our desire. There is some sort of force, I believe, that is assisting us in this, and especially when we start interacting with other people, trying to pop out of our bubbles. As long as we're being honest with ourselves and doing it for the right reasons, things will work out well. This ties into my family. I was born 1 month, 19 days before my mom's birthday. Her name sums to 119. A few years ago, I moved out from my ex's house. Her name sums to 119. We met on 11/9. This one I'm going to skip because I'm short on time. This conference here is a coded experience for me. My name equals 61, just like Philadelphia. This conference began on a date with 61 numerology. In ordinal, Anarchadelphia and Philadelphia both equal 101. It's 101 days after my birthday yesterday. After I built the calculator and started this code, I found that my gematria equals gematria. My first name has the same gematria as numbers. Of course, there's a prime relationship in there as well between 25 and 97. My last name has the same gematria as letters. And my name, Derek Tikkuri, sums to the same as gematria. Before I built the calculator, we weren't looking at reverse gematria. My full name sums to the same as reverse gematria in Latin. When you look at my astrology, we had the sun at 74, Saturn at 233, gematria, 74 and 233. My full name in ordinal, 203. My birth numerology, 23, born 23 weeks before a total solar eclipse. When you hear me talk, does anyone get reminded of the number 23 with Jim Carrey? Pretty strange, right? Jim Carrey was born 23 years before me. I have the same gematria as James Eugene Carrey. Both our full names sum to 95. I was 21 years old when the movie was released. Number 23 equals 2100. Ties into the release date as well. I talked about the 1331 riddle. The Matrix was released on 3/31, a date with 133 numerology. I was 13 years, 301 days old. Both my parents have this number in their numerology. I know I'm running short. This is definitely the last thing I want to touch on for certain. The movie Pi came out 1 month, 6 days after my birthday, just like Pi. And in this movie, this guy builds a calculator that decodes the Torah and tries to find the 216-letter name of God. And of course, I discovered this, again, after I decoded the Bible. Well, look at his birthday, June 4th. This is the main character in the film. That's my birthday. In Gematria, birthday equals 604. And his name, Sean Gillette, has the same Gematria as Gematrinator, which is the name of my calculator. The word pi has square number gematria of 337, which is the 68th prime. Sean Gillette was born in the year 68, and when this film was released, he was 30 years and 37 days old. This number sums to 314 in ordinal, by the way. My name in reverse equals 337. And look how old I was when the film came out, 13 years and 37 days. So this number is all over my life, my property tax bill, the cubicle I was sitting in when I made the calculator, the number of days between my brother, how old my girlfriend was when we broke up. I moved to California exactly 10 years before I bought my house. I moved in on my 32nd birthday, house equals 32, that was the number I wore in Little League. I have the same gematria as my dad in reverse reduction, 130, paid exactly $130,000 for my house. My address, 1954, is the year he was born. Here's my friend Mitch. He calls himself Darth Rager. He's got the Darth Maul. That equals 100. His full name in reduction equals 100. My friend Skyler, he goes out as a giraffe to some of these things because he's a tall, lanky dude. Skyler Soa equals 52, just like giraffe. All the pictures he sent me was an arm slinky, which sums to 111, just like his name. My buddy dresses up as Cat in the Hat. He's got the same gematria as Cat in the Hat and Dr. Seuss. I could go on. I'm at time here. You can call these all coincidences. I just want to point out that on my way here, I've never even really seen the end of a rainbow before. About an hour out of Harrisburg, I drove through one. And the mile marker even has gematria that matches with rainbow. So, this is all very strange stuff. And honestly, if I was sitting in one of these chairs, I'd be like, this guy's got to be lying about something. This is too amazing. And I myself, I've had psychedelic experiences with various substances. Nothing has tripped me out nearly as much as this numerology practice. So I just want to give a special thank you. I know I had to rush through a little bit about this. If you wanted more information, pop into my YouTube channel, Gematrinator85 on YouTube, spelled like you see it there. After this conference, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to do a longer video and kind of explain this out a little more and try and break this code down for everybody. But we're a little bit behind the dark occult as far as the mainstream media and fake news. And I think it's time for us to catch up. A lot of people say, they're very quick to say I'm not good at math and numbers. Well, maybe it's time that we spend a little bit of time and just pay attention, because just that little extra bit of stuff can really help. So thanks to everybody who made this possible. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hope you all enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you. I understand, dude. It's cool. Sorry I went over, but whew.
Okay, a few quick announcements. Mark Passio is is having a raffle. The What on Earth is Happening raffle prize. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm talking like this. Let me start over. What on Earth is Happening is having a raffle. 1 ticket, $5. 5 tickets, $10. 10 tickets is $15. The raffle winners will receive 2 T-shirts, 3 flash drives, 3 DVDs, a What on Earth is Happening podcast flash drive, and 10 What on Earth is Happening stickers. Also, we are going to be having the break now, since we kind of started a little bit late. Sorry. No, we're having the break now. We're gonna have the crypto panel after the break, and we're gonna be running the workshop soon. So enjoy your lunch. Come back. Well, yeah, we got. Yeah. What do you guys think? When do you guys want to come back? How long of a? We're having the workshops, which we're not gonna. Which are gonna run, probably about an hour.
Yeah, we're setting up the workshops. So if you have workshops, we're going to be in one Max and Derek are both on today, so we're gonna move one of them tomorrow. We'll probably move Max till tomorrow, so you can hit both of them. We'll do Derek today. Yeah, because they're.
We'll be back in 2 hours. 2 hours.
Two Derek. Yeah, let's make the break. We're actually going to make the break 2, if just to make it a little short. 2 yeah. Well, I don't think anything a.m. 2 p.m. We're going to have the crypto panel all set up. In the meantime, we're going to be setting up this space for the workshops.
To be clear, 2 p.m. crypto panel.